this podcast aims to help you break in and thrive in advertising. And we know it takes skill, passion, networking, a great portfolio, and luck to break into this industry. Andy Nairn wrote the book on luck and how brands can better their fortune regarding advertising. Andy also co-founded Lucky Generals in 2013. Lucky Generals is a creative company for people on a mission with offices in London and New York. They've been shortlisted for Campaign's Agency of the Year for 5 years in a row. But I'm sure you want to hear the work they've done. Their Superbowl work contains a shirtless Michael B. Jordan for an iconic household brand. Andy and Lucky Generals have worked with Amazon for their Super Bowl commercials the past few years. But let's get to why this matters for you. We go over ways you can better your luck to break in and thrive in the advertising industry. From the guy that wrote the book called Go Luck Yourself, blessed us with a shirtless Michael B. Jordan, and has helped brands for just about 30 years now, this is an episode you're going to want to listen to. And you can connect with Andy. You can learn more about his agency, Lucky Generals, too. We have his and all 100 plus guests' contact information and top secret resources listed and waiting for you at our website, breaking-entering.com. New website, breaking-entering.com. But of course, you have to go there to access all that for free. And before we begin, this episode is brought to you by Chicago Portfolio School. Chicago Portfolio School is a 1-year portfolio school option, of which 94% of graduates land jobs at excellent creative agencies. They've helped thousands of people just like you land jobs and can help you too. Please message me on LinkedIn or visit them at chicagoportfolio.com to learn more. Now, on with the show. This is the Breaking and Entering Advertising Podcast, and as usual, I'm your accomplice, Gino Schellenberger. Kick it, Mikey. All right, Andy Nairn, welcome to the Breaking and Entering Advertising Podcast. Thank you so much for coming on. This is going to be a fun episode. We're going to talk about you, some Super Bowl commercials, your agency you founded, and the book you wrote. So it's going to be a fun one, a lot to unpack here. But Andy, thanks for coming on again.
Yeah,
did I say your name correct? And where are you at?
You said it brilliantly. Thank you very much. It's it's a Scottish name. I'm from Scotland originally, so that's kind of, some people struggle with it, including my own kids even. So you did it brilliantly. And I'm down in just outside of London now. Nice.
Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in the middle of nowhere in the sort of in rural Scotland. It's sort of it's very far from anything to do with advertising. So it's a little place called the Borders. So it's just where Scotland meets England, but on the Scottish side. And but I've really always worked down in England, down in London, for almost 30 years now, which is terrifying.
Is it true that London founded strategic planning, like that the concept and the vertical of strategic planning and advertising?
Yeah, I guess it did in terms of the actual discipline, but of course the real truth is that great agencies all around the world have always had people who are brilliant at strategy. Maybe they weren't called strategists. Every American agency through the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, all those great agencies had people who were brilliant at coming up with strategic ideas. They maybe just didn't have in their job title. And I think that's quite a good reminder for all of us that that you don't necessarily need it in your job title to be good at that particular discipline. So you've got to show that you are needed and necessary, because lots of good agencies might be able to do without someone like you. So it keeps you on your toes.
I like that. Speaking of job titles, you're the founding partner at Lucky Generals Agency. That's pretty impressive. What does that mean? Tell us what you do there.
Well, I suppose it just means I was lucky enough to set it up in the first place, and nothing much more than that, really. As I say, my background is in strategy. So the three of us, we set this agency up with two friends. So two very, very good, proper, lovely friends of mine. We'd worked together for a long time beforehand, and then we figured out that we could probably do it ourselves. And so it's the classic trio, really, where one of us is, my friend Helen is an amazing account person. My friend Danny is a brilliant creative, and I do strategy. So it sort of was a nice coming together of all three of us, really.
Nice. And what were you all doing before you started Lucky Generals in 2013?
Well, we'd all worked in various places on both sides of the Atlantic, and various, classic big agencies. And then Helen set up an agency, which we were both at, and eventually became her partners in. And then, actually, funnily enough, we did a merger, which seemed like a good idea at the time, and was not. Let's say we hated it. We sort of, for no sort of horrible reasons or anything like that. There's very nice people involved, but there was just a lack of clarity about what this merger was going to be like. We were doing very well as a creative agency called MCBD at the time, and we merged with a digital agency who were the digital agency of the decade at the time in the UK. So on paper, it made a lot of sense to have a great creative agency and a great digital agency both together, and it just didn't work out. But again, that's one of these things that you'll find in your career where something that you really don't like can be quite a good spur to making you realize what you do want to do. And that's was very helpful, actually, that experience when we set up Lucky Generals.
So what did it make you realize that you wanted to do, or what you needed to do?
It made us realize that we wanted to go small again and build something from scratch, rather than merge two existing things together. And most of all, it made us realize that we wanted to have fun. I think life is too short to be drudging away, and sometimes you do have to work hard for sure, but you might as well have a bit of a laugh. So doing it with two friends was just has been the making of this agency, and we try and encourage everyone, even over the last couple of years when it's obviously been tough for various reasons, we try and make sure that everyone's having a good time and laughing in our agency.
Gotcha. So what's the mission?
So we set ourselves up to be a creative company for people on a mission. So it's kind of a pretty simple set of words, those, but a creative company, not just an ad agency. So a lot of our work has been in all sorts of, unusual media or things that are hard to describe for people, because I think we forget that this business is about people. A lot of startup agencies focus on one sort of technology. They'll say that we're an AR agency or a social media agency or a digital agency, and we're just about people. And then we use technology to get to those people. And then people on a mission was really the clincher. We like working with companies or people who want to put a little dent in the universe in some way. We don't really get on well with people who just want to grow sales by 2 or 3% a year.
That's interesting. You're strategic in who you work with, because
sure,
there are some agencies that say yes to everybody. They're a service agency.
Nah.
If you want flyers, we'll make you flyers. We'll take the paycheck and we'll have a good day.
No, we're sort of the opposite of that. We always have been. We never wanted to be, again, because we had that quite liberating experience. We got a glimpse of what we didn't want to do. And then we kind of said, no, we're going to only work with people we like as well, and that we can have good times with, that we believe in there. And so we say no to far more pieces of business than we say yes to. And we don't have that many clients. We've, maybe got less than a dozen clients. Okay. And that's fine by us. We'd rather sort of work with the same people for a long period of time and do more and more and more for them than keep on going after new pieces of business.
I want to relate this back real quick, because our audience here, they're aspiring advertisers, whether they're in college or they're 35-year-old doctors that want to transfer into advertising, let's say. You kind of have to be this selective when you're searching for jobs. Let's say you work hard, you have a good portfolio, your brand, what you want to do in advertising. You have the knowledge and skill set, and you're looking for your first job in advertising. You kind of have to be selective, because a lot of people will take that first job, and it can set you back some years if it is just a service agency. So that just reminded me real quick to interview, when you're interviewing, to interview the agency as well, kind of like what you're doing with your clients.
People forget that you're interviewing the agency. Absolutely, 100%. And And this service point, I really like this point you make. We never see ourselves as a service agency. I mean, obviously we have to, we operate with our clients, but we never see ourselves as serving them or just taking orders and doing what they ask us. We will challenge them and offer advice and consultancy and tell them when they're doing something wrong or stupid or that's going to backfire on them, because that's where we do our best work. And we don't want to work with anyone who just thinks we're going to say yes to everything they suggest. And actually, we see ourselves as manufacturers. We should be, and again, because we, without boring you all about this historical element, but it was so instructive because we'd set this thing up that we didn't like. Then before we could set up the new thing, we weren't allowed to work with each other because you get into lots of legal rules about, you're not allowed to start up a new agency straight away. So it meant that we couldn't do any work together for about, 6 months, 9 months. But that meant that when we started, we were desperate. We were like a coiled up spring wanting to, do work. And I think that's stuck with us ever since. We like making things, not just talking about stuff, but making stuff and getting it out into the outside world. And that's what I'd encourage you to do if you're starting. Get work out, make stuff, as soon as you possibly can, and then you have a real taste for it. Yeah,
you have to. And you guys have done pretty well. You've been shortlisted for Campaign's Agency of the Year for past couple of years, 5 years, maybe more, since this was when I took this research down. And you have offices in London and New York. So you guys have grown since 2013. How many people are currently at Lucky Generals?
It's about 90 in London and about 20 in New York. So Fantastic. We're kind of old enough, big enough to sort of do pretty much anything you can throw at us, but we're also small enough to know each other's names, And I feel like we'd hate to get past that. We always joke about in our last place, we had 3 people called Kim on our team. And, that's sort of felt like it was too many. We need to know everyone's names.
Yeah, 3 Kims. That makes sense. That's too many.
Yeah.
I know you. So I know you've all from your Superbowl work with Amazon and the Alexa ads ranging. When was the first one? That was with Gordon Ramsay and Jeff Bezos himself and Cardi B, Anthony Hopkins. Was that the first one? And what year was that?
Yeah, so I think that was 2018. That'd be right. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. And it's sort of a pretty crazy thing because, we're at that stage we didn't have an office in New York, so we were. It's a bunch of people in London who know nothing about American football, as we would call it. Luckily, it turns out you don't need to know very much about that for the Super Bowl because everyone just wants to be entertained. So it was sort of a lovely thing. We got that. We had to pitch. We pitch for most projects with Amazon. We've been working with them almost since the beginning. So, we started up in 2013. We got our first Amazon project 2014. And just have got bigger and bigger. It's a good example of, just growing the relationship rather than going after lots of new clients. And so in 2018, we got the Super Bowl brief and we said, yeah, why not? If this is just about doing something really cool and fun. And of course, Alexa, the product had just been introduced not that long before. But people forget because now even now it's so part of society and it's literally a household name. But when we were launching it, it was up against some other really good, Google, Apple, Microsoft. Everybody had voice technology, but what we figured was that there was something about Alexa that was different. And part of it was because she has a human name. There was maybe more of an opportunity to do something a bit more human and a bit more fun and softer. Not making it a tech. Horrible big tech brand. And all the thing with all these big tech companies, although we sort of marvel at how efficient they are and how we want them to work and be reliable and all the rest of it, we don't like our brands to be so perfect that if you go around boasting saying we're the biggest company in the world, our technology is the best in the world, people are going to be pretty sick of you. So to show a big tech company having a sense of humor about itself and even imagining the product not working, it was kind of a pretty ballsy thing to do. To spend
let's give some context. Give some context with that first commercial. It was so funny. Like it started off with they were in HQ, I'm assuming, and a supervisor goes up to Jeff Bezos and is like, "Hey, like Amazon Alexa has lost her voice. We need a replacement," right?
Yeah, that's right. And then kind of Jeff's kind of saying, "Oh, how's that possible? You know, what are you going to do? Have you got a plan?" And one of the assistants says, "Yeah, of course I've got a plan," but we can tell that she's absolutely terrified and doesn't really have a plan at all. And then we sort of quick cut through a whole bunch of celebrities who are being given these kind of headset
and
devices.
It kind of looks like what you're wearing right now. I don't know if this will be.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm reliving the moment. And so they all have, whether it's Cardi B or Anthony Hopkins or Gordon Ramsay, people like that, they're all trying out and, making a right mess of, terrible customer service and terrible.
And they're doing it live. Somebody's asking for some advice and they're taking over live. It was a good one.
Exactly. Yeah, and so, and eventually we all, it resolves by sort of saying, Alexa regains her voice and actually we work out that nobody does it better than her. But what was neat about that as well was that we did actually work with the engineers at Amazon, who were amazing, and made sure that we had a little Easter egg in the product itself. So for the week before the Super Bowl, if you asked who's going to win the Super Bowl, then Alexa would give a little cough and not be able to answer the question properly. So, and once people sort of heard about that a little bit before the
hinting
big match,
she's losing her voice.
Yeah, so everyone would be trying it and recording themselves doing it and posting it on social media and stuff like that. So, yeah, it was great. That was the first British agency to win the public vote for the best Super Bowl ad. So that was really what got started.
And what was it? Ad Meter?
Yeah, Ad Meter.
Nice. Congrats. Yeah. Congrats.
No, thank you.
That, and then after that, and I bring this up, and you've done some amazing ones recently. You did the Mind Reader one with Scarlett Johansson and Colin Jost. Is that that's her real husband in real life?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, it's a couple. So the idea or the theme is always the same. So like I say, people want to be entertained on this day in American sport, and we want to show a bit of humility, I guess, because we don't want to be this big, overbearing tech company. So let's make fun of ourselves. And so whether that's, like I say, showing the product not working, or a couple of other ads we've done. One we had us imagining what would happen if we put Alexa in everything.
Oh yeah.
And then it's in toothbrushes again with famous celebrities, but it's in their dog, Harrison Ford's dog collar and all the rest.
The dog orders a bunch of dog food, gravy, sausages. I thought that was right. I remember talking about that in college class. I was like, that one was hilarious.
That's fun. That's good. Yeah. Well, that's thank you, because, and again, it's just a nice idea because it's in, people do worry about these voice devices are getting everywhere, isn't it? Getting a bit much. So to be able to have a bit of a laugh at ourselves and say, yeah, maybe there are some things that just don't make any sense. And then we had Michael B. Jordan last year, looking beautiful, and somebody imagining, Alexa as him being the new Alexa, and lots of mishaps sort of happening because of that. And then this time, Scarlett and Colin sort of imagining what would happen if Alexa could read your mind. So we're always imagining sort of silly scenarios where eventually at the end we say, oh, no, thank goodness Alexa is really just the way that she is.
I love it. And then those are all great.
Thank you.
And so you mentioned earlier, like, that's an example of working with the same client over years, building a healthy, mutually beneficial relationship creates great work rather than, scouting new business at all. If you're looking for so much new business and you're looking to grow, then you're going to be neglecting your current clientele.
Yeah, exactly. And they can tell that, and it's it's not fair on them if they're sort of paying your bills while you go chasing after other brands. So we prefer to. Also, you get better work out because you trust each other. We had been working before that Super Bowl ad. I guess we'd worked with Amazon for 4 years, and so when you come to a moment like in that first commercial, there's a little bit where we have absolute silence for quite a long period of time. And if you remember how much a spot at the Super Bowl costs, 30 seconds might be $5 million. And we spent a lot of that $5 million saying absolutely nothing because Alexa, I think it was Cardi B, couldn't get the country music on. So there's a huge big gap.
Yeah.
Nothing. And that's pretty scary, because a lot of clients might say, hey, I'm spending $5 million on this spot, and actually we spent 15 million on that because it was a 90-second spot. So it's a lot of money to spend showing your product kind of not working and then to have a silence in the middle of it. But they were brilliant partners, and they realized that, no, that's what it takes to sort of stand out and make people laugh.
Yep. It says a lot about the client if they're willing to accept and buy and produce and run an idea that's brave. That's a little bit scary, but creative.
Yeah.
So kudos to them. I'm sure it's been fantastic working with them, and we could do a whole podcast on that. But I would like to move on to other clients that you have at Lucky Generals. Over the years, you've grown to, you said, around 100, 130 people. But what other clients besides Amazon do you have that you've really enjoyed working with?
We've got people like Virgin Atlantic. We've just won, which is a great brand, obviously on both sides of the Atlantic. Richard Branson's kind of flagship, very innovative airline. We work with some really British brands that are, I'll probably have to explain a little bit. There's Yorkshire Tea is the best-selling tea in Britain, and obviously everyone loves tea over here.
But was it always the best-selling tea?
No, that's kind of the interesting thing. Is, as the name suggests, it's from Yorkshire, so it's like a regional brand. And until very recently, it was the number 3 brand, and we've taken it to number 1. So it's been really quite.
That's right. I remember that in the book.
Fun. Yeah, thank you. And the idea there is that people sort of people think that Yorkshire is one of these places. It's very blue collar, down to earth. People do things properly. They've got no airs or graces. So the idea is that where everything's done proper, so they make a proper cup of tea. People are really fussy about that in Britain. But then we just exaggerate it to ridiculous degrees. So everything from, the way that the hold music works to the way that they do interviews, everything is exaggerated to make it feel like it's done properly. So that's been a real sort of, huge success story in a market that hasn't changed much. Before then, the same 2 players had been number 1 and 2 for like decades. So that was fun. And then we work with lots of others. There's a brand called Co-op, which is amazing. It's like the biggest or one of the biggest superstores, like, grocery retailers, supermarkets. But it's also, get this, it's also the biggest funeral provider in the UK. And it's got an insurance business, and it's got a pharmacy business, and they run their own schools as well. It's basically the world's first cooperative business in the world. So the profits that they make go back into the community. Yeah, well, that's really, it's hard because you're like, how do you do from food to funerals? It's tricky. But what we got round to was just focusing on how ethical they are. They were set up by a poor community in the north of England to feed and look after their members and to make sure that they someone could bury them, frankly. And now they still do all of those great things, and they put the money back into the community. And of course now, although they're very old, that's a really cool thing, right? In society now, we're sort of maybe realizing that we need to share and look after each other a little bit more. And so it was sort of presenting that philosophy in a modern way. Because in this country, we're used to, they're 175 years old. So we sort of think of them as a bit of an old-fashioned organization. But I was sort of saying, well, imagine if they were from Sweden and they were called the Coop, and they were an app on your phone, and you said, wow, I've got this amazing brand that do food and funerals, and whenever you spend money, the money goes back into the community. If I said they were from Silicon Valley as well, you'd think, wow, that's incredible. But it's, because they're almost 200 years old and they're from Rochdale in the middle of nowhere, we sort of forget what a cool modern business idea that is. So it was all about modernizing that core thought and saying, it's not about CSR, it's not about purpose washing. It's just what we do and what we've always done, and that is the line is, it's what we do, which has been a really sort of big campaign over here for the last few years.
It's been what they've done it for so long.
We just do it. No biggie.
I love it. And you've learned a lot of lessons, through Lucky Generals, and you've been in the industry how long? 30 plus years?
Yeah, almost 30 years. Yeah. Don't make me any older than I already am. That's the
No, it's knowledge, it's wisdom. People my age would die for that. We need that wisdom. So that's why we have you on the podcast. You can give us some of that wisdom.
Well recovered. Amazing.
Yes. But great. And you have so much experience through Lucky Generals and some agencies before, but all this kind of culminates to this book that you recently wrote, right? It's called Go Luck Yourself. Yeah. And when did you write it? When did it come out?
So I wrote it during the pandemic, and then it
came out a little bit
afterwards. Yeah, do you know what? I sort of figured, I would never have got around to it otherwise, but I suppose was spending a bit of time at home. And also I just started thinking about luck a lot. It's a kind of funny thing, isn't it? Like, we never really talk about luck. It's a real taboo in the West. But I found myself thinking about it a lot because, of course, mostly I was thinking how unlucky this whole blooming pandemic was.
Right.
But then I started thinking about, a lot of the other big stories of the last couple of years, like, Black Lives Matter or Me Too, or, made me think, I am an old, white, straight, able-bodied bloke. Made me think, God, no, I am actually really lucky. My career's been lucky. Mm-hmm. And it'd be nice to do something that brought a bit of luck to others. So all the money from the book, all the royalties go to working class kids to help them sort of get a lucky break. And the book is about luck. So it's a kind of a lucky book that brings luck to other people, hopefully.
Right. And it's set up in a way, the format is you talk about industry conventions, you frame those, what's standard, what's old school thought, or what might be the thought that most people think, and then you break that thought, those conventions, with what luck says. And how do you define convention versus luck in your book? Because you give a bunch of examples, but overall, what's the difference between the two?
Yeah, I think just the convention is, one big convention is we figure that hard work and talent are the only things that they're important. And of course, they're hugely important, especially for some of your listeners who are starting out, in their careers. But you also need some luck as well. Luck plays a really sort of strong role. Gives you your first lucky break, and you'll have luck throughout your career. And what I found is being mindful of it. If you really think about your luck and appreciate it, then you're much more likely to be successful. And if you just sort of attribute all your success down to your own unique brilliance and unique sort of hard work, then you're kind of kidding yourself a little bit, and also making yourself vulnerable to, messing up. Because a nice thing about luck is if you appreciate you have been a bit lucky, you keeps you on your toes and keeps you sort of wanting to not be complacent.
Yeah. Reminds me of Outliers.
Yeah.
Gladwell.
Yeah, there's some crossover.
Absolutely. So there's a lot we can go here, but what are some other conventions that I was actually curious when I was researching for this? What's maybe one convention that you might have gotten some backlash, or some people might have commented on that might have upset some people in this book when you're writing it? What was like a convention that you said is kind of old school, or we need to rethink? Caught people.
There's probably lots. One is there's a convention that history is boring, and we should, especially at this moment in time, it's all about looking forward into the future. Brands should never look back. That's going to make them feel old-fashioned and boring. But actually finding out, like I just did there with the co-op, finding out what the roots of a company are is a really good way to figure out what you need to do to propel them forwards into the future. So, convention might say, don't look back. But I think luck would say, appreciate what you got. And if you've got an amazing brand history or story, then you should realize how lucky that's, like gold dust. And a lot of companies just don't realize this amazing treasure trove of stories that they're sitting on, that they could turn into something, in future. And there's lots of them, lots of, to use the example of Yorkshire tea that talked about a minute ago, a lot of companies don't realize how lucky they are to come from an unusual place. A lot of other companies might have thought, well, we don't want to make a big deal about Yorkshire because we want to appeal to the whole country. But actually, it was great that they realized that Yorkshire brings with it an attitude of doing things properly, like I discussed, and that is a lucky thing to have. It's not a limiting thing to be from a particular part in the world. It gives you something to talk about.
I remember you mentioned the book. If you personify like a location or where a city, where you're from, you say that strong brand narrative from where your roots are, it makes you so much stronger and more appealing. Like everybody wants to know. Everybody loves talking about New York, the city that never sleeps. If you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. If it's New York, New York strong. Like it makes sense. You're embodying a group of people, and then people can respect that.
Yeah, that's right. But sometimes it takes somebody from outside. This is what I noticed in the book: is a lot of companies don't realize the treasure that's sitting right under their nose. It's a bit like, with human beings. When we, you probably don't think about your hometown very much because that's where you grew up and it's just normal to you. And sometimes somebody comes from out of town and says, wow, this is where you're from. This is amazing. You need to tell people about it. And you go, really? And sometimes that's what agencies need to do. A lot of the time, we're not really inventing crazy new stuff. We're just pointing out the really obvious stuff under the client's nose, saying you've got an amazing name, or you've got amazing people that you've done nothing with, or wow, can't believe you've not talked about this product feature before. Right. And it's all just sitting there waiting for someone to draw attention to it.
This is perfect. Again, another correlation that we can connect to the job search process. People, if you're looking, if you're talking about who you are, say where you're from and look under your nose, as you say in the book. Like, what other parallels are there when you're looking for your own job? If we're in a job interview, like,
that's good. Yeah, we're all sort of, sometimes we need a friend to tell us what our strengths are, before our interview, don't we? Because we don't maybe like to talk about ourselves or our our strengths. And another couple of things are, so there's a whole section in the book, for instance, about turning misfortune into good fortune. Like a lot of brands, a lot of great brand strategies have taken something that feels like a bad thing, like they've got no money or they've got no budget, no timings, or they've got a product weakness, and they sort of turn them into something positive. But I think the same applies to people as well. If you're going for a job and you maybe, your first job in advertising, maybe you don't have the best degree or the best college course or whatever, or you don't have the best job experience, just think about what you've got that you might think is a negative, but think, well, how does that make it? How can I turn that into positive? Maybe you had to take out time to do something else, and that might look bad on your resume. But no, actually, what did I learn in that time off that how could I turn that into a positive?
I love this. It's like I was just talking with a student worker from University of Illinois who helps me with the podcast. His name's Juan, so shout out Juan. But he's a chemistry major.
Great.
Isn't that awesome? I said that's the best thing that you could have said, because that is just so interesting. Whatever your experience in chemistry, I'm sure you can figure out a story of how you connect it to advertising. I'm sure you can turn that into something interesting that will catch a recruiter's attention or somebody like yourself.
That's for sure. I can sort of imagine you turning that into, because I did chemistry, I've got a really good handle on data. I've got I'm very interested in experimentation and in understanding things work. I've, got a really
scientific
method. I can handle data. I did law at university, which is obviously nothing to do with what I ended up doing. And I definitely I can remember thinking, I'd be up against lots of kids who maybe had marketing or advertising degrees. And I thought that, but I can turn law into something interesting because, and this might be slightly contrived, but it seemed to work. I sort of said, it's the same sort of thing, really. We're trying to find the facts, for a client and put their best story forwards, assembling the best story that you can with the materials available to you. And that's just what I'm doing as an advertising, really. It's the same as an attorney does, putting a good case forward for someone. I
love it. Yeah, figuring out your narrative. You talked on, before we started recording, finding your strengths.
Yes. Yeah, I think that figuring out all those good things, figuring out your strengths, figuring out your weaknesses, and just sort of trying to have a good self-awareness of yourself also, I think, looking out for, sort of opportunities that are, recognizing opportunities when they come your way. I think one of the problems that we have as human beings is sometimes we're so busy with our lives and our day jobs that when sort of opportunity comes knocking, we're sort of not there. We don't recognize the opportunity for what it is because we're so obsessed about doing the one thing. So we might have it in our mind that we're going to apply to one sort of a job, and so when another opportunity comes our way, we ignore it because it's not really what we had in mind. But maybe if we pause to think about it, then actually we would recognize it as being a more interesting opportunity. So just keeping that sort of open mind, I think, is a good thing as well.
Yeah, you have to. And it's required for this industry, an open mind, because you're going to get clients of all types. You're not going to really get to pick who they are,
Yeah.
And you got to figure it out. You got to be curious.
Yeah.
You have to research. Go to the, if you get somebody that's got a factory of, they produce tea, you got to go there. And that's the fun part.
And actually, a lot of I think a really important thing, especially at the beginning of your career, is to realize that you can make more of a difference on something that everyone else is bored by. So if someone gives you an opportunity on something, I don't know, some really boring financial services product, or something that doesn't feel like it's going to be a lot of fun, if you understand that and turn that into something interesting, that's more impressive to someone like me than if you go and work on Nike and you do something cool. Because I know that you can do something. Anyone can do. Not to diminish the amazing work that they do in that brand, but it's to have that open mind and realize that you can do great work on any single product is what is required, really, to cut through.
Pick a brand, even if you're doing spec work. Like,
yeah,
I don't want to see something that I already love, like Nike, because you're competing. If you're doing spec work for Nike on your book, or your strategy portfolio, whatever it may look like, if you're doing work for Nike, you're competing against the amazing work of Wyden Kennedy the past
40 years.
Why don't you pick a brand that people don't really like, and then you have the opportunity to make it better, make you feel better about a product? I'm not the biggest fan of Popeyes. I will say it.
Yeah.
So make Popeyes better.
And then that becomes really impressive because I can see that you've taken something that didn't really seem to have very much potential and you've made me see it with fresh eyes, which I think is a really good sort of.
Yes. Anything else, messages from your book, those Luck would say, that you want to get out to our people, or advice that you have?
Yeah, well, if I had one piece of advice, I would quote the amazing Dolly Parton. I think she has got this lovely phrase, which is "work out who you are and do it on purpose." And I think that's a great lesson for anyone, especially at the start of their career in advertising.
Work out who you are and do it on purpose.
Yeah, and she's done it pretty damn well herself. She came from nothing, and has worked her way up to be head of an enormous multi-million-dollar business.
Got her own amusement park.
She's got her own amusement park. She's obviously incredibly nominated. Singer, songwriter, actor. I think she even came up with or helped to fund one of the vaccines, didn't she, for COVID? And so this idea that work out who you are and do it on purpose, I think is interesting because it's just then commit. It's like we said before, you work out what your strengths are, work out what your weaknesses are, and then just commit to being that person that's being true to yourself, and turn all those good things to your advantage. And she plays up. She plays up all those things. She makes fun of her, her body and of her blonde hair, and pretends to be stupid when she's anything but. She's very cleverly sort of managing her own sort of reputation, I guess.
I love it. It's great advice. I also saw something today on social media. If you tell yourself, your brain, what is really important to you, you figure out what those things are, your brain will, there's actually research, your brain will filter, and it will change chemically to filter whatever is important. It'll let you know, it'll guide you to that. So yeah, figuring out what's important to you, and it'll write it down, and your brain will do the rest. So where can people find your book and find you if they want to ask you questions about Lucky Generals, your work? We don't get a million listeners, so you won't get bombarded, but you'll get some curious people that want some advice. So
cool. Well, you can find the book at all the usual places, Amazon. Obviously, I'm honor bound to say that because it's a client, but also you can get it at all the other usual places if you'd prefer.
Amazon. There you go.
Yeah. And then we're at luckygenerals.com. That's our website. And I'm at my Twitter's Andy Nairn. So it's pretty easy. We like to keep things simple. And yeah,
Perfect.
we'd love to hear from anyone who's got any questions. Great.
Then I will have your resources that you recommend hidden and at our website which is our website is www.breaking-entering.com, and I'll link to all of that in the bio. But Andy, this has been fantastic.
Thank you.
Insights. I really appreciated you walking us through your book, your agency, how you guys got started, and your commercials that you've made. So it's been great. So thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you very, very much for having me on. Really appreciate it.
Of course. Have a good night.
Cheers.
Did you hear anything on this episode about a job you'd like to have someday, soon, in advertising, strategy, design? The kind of job where you use your brain and your creativity? If you did, chances are a portfolio can really help you get that job. That's where Chicago Portfolio School comes in. They have programs and classes that help you show off your thinking and get you the job you want. So visit them at chicagoportfolio.com. And if you drop my name, Gino, into the chat box, they'll send you more info and a cool Sharpie. Or just some more info. You can decide that. Thanks. Thank you so much for listening to this entire episode of the Breaking and Entering Advertising Podcast. If you liked what you listened to today and you like the guest, please go ahead and connect with them. Easiest way to find their contact information and to see those resources that they recommended for you is to go to our Instagram at Breaking and Entering Pod, all one word. And for some quick thank yous for making this show possible, the first one is the company Shure. It's a microphone company, Shure. They provided the microphone that you're listening to right now. It's the MV7. It's great for podcasting and other forms of content. So if you're interested in starting a podcast or you're looking for equipment, talk with me. I really recommend the Shure MV7. Happy to give you details on that. And I would also like to thank my two guys, Mikey Malarkey, who's our audio engineer, does it every week. He's the Let's Kick It in the beginning. Thank you to Mikey. And of course, thank you to Buchan Zhang, our creative director. Buchan is responsible, amazing visuals on our Instagram. So thank you, Buchan. And thank you all once more for listening. We will see you next week. Thank you for tuning in to Breaking and Entering. We want to be transparent with our valued listeners, so we'd like to disclose that this episode was made possible through a paid collaboration. The funds from this collaboration were used to produce this episode and contribute to the growth and enhancement of our show. At Breaking and Entering, we are committed to delivering high-quality content that informs, entertains, and engages our audience. We carefully select our partners to ensure that any sponsored or paid content aligns with the values and interests of our listeners. Rest assured that while this episode is a result of a paid collaboration, our opinions and creative control over the content remain independent and, of course, authentic. We prioritize providing valuable insights and experiences to our audience regardless of any paid partnerships. And we greatly appreciate the support of our sponsors and partners as they play a vital role in helping us bring content to your ears. If you have any questions about our partnerships or this disclosure, please do not hesitate to reach out to us at Geno, Geno, at breakenterpod.com. Thank you.